Hello and welcome to the print. Today I shall speak about the ceasefire between Iran and Israel. The Iran-Israel conflict and America's entry into their war caused extreme unease in West Asia. Global markets tumbled as tensions increased, particularly when Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping. But Iran and Israel were quick to accept a United States mediated ceasefire on 24th June, owing to intense domestic weariness, military fatigue, and international pressure. The US strikes on Iran's nuclear sites thus acted both as a catalyst and a negotiating tool, putting in place a fragile peace. Whether this ceasefire is only a matter of convenience driven by domestic compulsions and mutual exhaustion, or indeed a step towards lasting peace, remains to be seen. Implications for Iran and Israel. For Iran, the bombardment destroyed vital infrastructure, inflicted civilian casualties, and further burdened an economy already strained by long-standing sanctions. Although the country ingeniously accepted that its nuclear program was severely damaged, as also initially claimed by the US, a more detailed post-strike assessment suggested that the setbacks were limited, perhaps delaying progress only by months. On the domestic front, Iran has had to contend with economic setbacks and rising poverty. In the regime's attempt to remain in power, repression intensified. Iranian authorities executed alleged collaborators and stifled dissent. These measures emphasized a ruling dispensation battling to maintain legitimacy and authority under extreme pressure. A section of the Iranian population, though, sees these imperious actions by the US and Israel as an affront to Iran's sovereignty, serving to revive nationalistic fervor. The prospects of regime change for the people of Iran are even more frightening given the experience of countries such as Libya and Iraq, where such regime changes only ushered in more chaos and instability and even civil war. As far as Israel is concerned, public sentiment within the country began to shift following the initial strikes. While Prime Minister Netanyahu and military leaders heralded success, claiming strategic objectives had been achieved, they were met with growing public and political war weariness, especially with the end of hostilities in Gaza nowhere in sight. Israel has also come to realize the limits of military action, the aim of the June strikes being only to degrade and not destroy Iran's nuclear and ballistic capabilities. The Israeli assessment is that they have only bought time, anything between 2 to 4 years, before Iran's nuclear program gets back on track, an assessment more in consonance with the US one. Moreover, reliance on US endorsement became increasingly apparent as America insisted on restraint after supporting Israel's initial strikes, exercising strong influence over the countries, that is, Israel's strategic options. With domestic pressure already simmering due to the prolonged Gaza conflict, the Israeli leadership recognized the political and economic risks of extending the confrontation with Iran. As things stand, Iran remains an existential threat for Israel and therefore future military actions or confrontations can never be ruled out altogether. The role of international stakeholders. International pressures and realpolitik also had their roles to play. While the US strikes served as a strong signal of deterrence, military action was used as a lever to broker peace to avoid a broader, long drawn conflict. The massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000-pound bunker bursting bombs used by the US, did cause some damage but failed to obliterate Iran's nuclear capabilities. Regional stakeholders, particularly Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain, initially chose to endure the confrontation with Iran but ultimately supported a ceasefire, fearing a regional spillover of the conflict, jeopardizing energy supplies. The G7 echoed these concerns, urging for a ceasefire and renewed nuclear talks with Iran, while other European countries, along with the United Nations, warned against further escalation and criticized the unilateral bombing of nuclear sites without legal justification. Global oil markets also fluctuated sharply, and energy security concerns became a significant catalyst for de escalation. Iran's traditional allies, China and Russia, remained neutral and joined the chorus of voices calling for de escalation. Thus, the absence of broad international support, either for Iran or for Israel, compounded the pressure on both countries to accept a pause to review their respective entrenched mindsets and options. A fragile peace. The ceasefire between Iran and Israel has thus emerged as a result of an interlocking web of military exhaustion, domestic strain, and international coercion. However, this ceasefire is fragile. Damage assessments are incomplete, and Iran will no doubt rebuild its nuclear infrastructure. The attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities have exposed the discriminatory nature of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and have perhaps only strengthened Iran's resolve to further its nuclear ambitions. Israel may have succeeded in blanking out the damage caused by retaliatory Iranian strikes through strict media censorship. However, a few visuals did surface of bombed out buildings in Tel Aviv and Haifa, which caused a number of civilian casualties and showed that the famed Iron Dome is not invincible and can be breached. For a small country like Israel, even a single hit is one too many, and being on the receiving end may have contributed to its acceptance of the ceasefire. Nevertheless, both countries retain significant military capabilities that can be put into play at short notice, and minor violations of the ceasefire cannot be totally ruled out. Accordingly, for this fragile peace to transition to a lasting peace and to arrive at a win-win solution, mature statesmanship must replace jingoistic brinkmanship. Regime change is not the answer. This is General Naravane for ThePrint.